You're walking into a room. 20 people, maybe 30. You feel it immediately, the weight of their attention. You're not sure if your hair looks right. You're not sure if you're walking normally. You're not sure if they can tell you're nervous. Your face feels hot. Your hands feel stiff. You take your seat, and the feeling stays with you for the next hour. That everyone in that room is watching you, judging you, cataloging every tiny thing you do wrong. But here's the thing. The real answer is far stranger. They're not watching you at all. And the reason why has nothing to do with them, and everything to do with how your brain evolved to lie to you. The name. In 1999, Cornell University psychology professor Thomas Gilovich, along with researchers Victoria Husted-Medvec and Kenneth Savitsky, published a paper that gave a name to something you've felt your entire life. They called it the spotlight effect. The definition is simple. You overestimate the extent to which other people notice your appearance, your behavior, and your mistakes. You walk through life as if a spotlight is following you everywhere you go. You assume everyone sees you the way you see yourself. But they don't. They're not looking at you. They're looking at themselves. And this isn't just a quirk of modern life. It's a deeply rooted feature of human cognition, one that has shaped everything from how you choose your clothes to how you feel in a crowded room. The T-shirt. Here's how Gilovich proved it. He brought college students into a lab. He gave them a T-shirt to wear. And not just any T-shirt. This T-shirt had a giant picture of Barry Manilow on the front. Now, you have to understand, Barry Manilow was not cool. Even in 1999, Barry Manilow was not cool. He was the kind of musician your parents listened to. The kind of musician that made you cringe. So these students put on this T-shirt, and then they were told to walk into a room full of other students and just sit there. Before they went in, the researchers asked them a question. How many people do you think will notice your shirt? The students thought about it. They thought about how embarrassing it was. They thought about how obvious it must look. And they said, about half. 50%. Then they walked in. They sat there. They left. And the researchers went to the other students in the room and asked them a simple question. What was on that person's T-shirt? The answer? Only about 10% of the people in the room could correctly identify Barry Manilow on that shirt. 10%. The students thought 50% of people were staring at them. The real number was 1 in 10. That's the spotlight effect. And it gets even more interesting. The embarrassment. Gilovich ran a second version of this experiment. This time, he gave some students a T-shirt with a more neutral image. Bob Marley, Martin Luther King Jr., something people wouldn't feel embarrassed wearing. And what do you think happened? The same thing. Even when the shirt wasn't embarrassing, the students still overestimated how many people noticed it. They still thought the spotlight was on them. Why? Because it's not about embarrassment. It's about you. You are the center of your own universe. You wake up in the morning and you see the world from your own eyes. You hear your own thoughts. You feel your own feelings. The transparency. There's a second illusion that goes hand in hand with the spotlight effect. Gilovich and Savitsky called it the illusion of transparency. And it's terrifying. The illusion of transparency is your belief that your internal state, your anxiety, your nervousness, your fear, is obvious to everyone around you. You think people can see right through you. You think your face is a billboard advertising every insecure thought you've ever had. But here's the truth. People can't see your internal state. They can't read your mind. They can't see your anxiety unless you're visibly shaking or turning bright red. And even then, they probably don't care. They're too busy worrying about their own internal state. This illusion has been studied extensively, and it explains so much. It explains why you feel exposed during a presentation, why you feel like everyone can tell you're nervous, why you feel like you're transparent, like a glass wall, with everyone staring right through you. But they're not. They're staring at themselves. The conversation. But surely this was just one unusual group of college students in a lab setting. Surely in real life, people actually do notice you, right? You might be thinking that right now. This sounds interesting, but in my actual life, people really are looking at me. That's a fair objection. And Gilovich anticipated it. He and his colleagues ran another study looking at something called empathy neglect. Here's what they found. When you make a mistake in public, you assume everyone judges you harshly. You assume they're thinking, what an idiot. But in reality, other people are much more forgiving than you think. Why? Because they've been there. They've made the same mistake. They've felt the same embarrassment. They can empathize with you, but you don't realize that. You neglect their empathy. You assume they're as critical of you as you are of yourself. But they're not. They're probably thinking, I've done that before. That sucks. I hope nobody noticed me when I did that. Everyone is trapped in their own spotlight. Everyone is too busy worrying about themselves to judge you. The group. The spotlight effect doesn't just apply to how you look. It applies to what you say. Think about a group discussion, a meeting at work, a classroom seminar. You say something, and then you spend the rest of the conversation wondering if anyone heard you, wondering if anyone thought it was smart, wondering if anyone thought it was stupid. You assume your contribution was noticed. You assume your words carried weight. Gilovich and his colleagues tested this too. They asked groups of people to have a discussion. Then they asked each person, what percentage of the conversation did you contribute? And then they asked everyone else, what percentage did that person contribute? The result? People consistently overestimated their own contribution. They thought they were dominating the conversation. They thought everyone was hanging on their every word. In reality, they were just one voice among many. The spotlight had tricked them again. The scar. But maybe the most powerful demonstration of the spotlight effect came from a study done before it even had a name. In 1980, researchers Kleck and Strinta ran an experiment on physical appearance. They brought volunteers into a lab and applied makeup to their faces. The makeup created the appearance of a prominent, disfiguring scar. They showed the volunteers the scar in a mirror. And then, just before they sent the volunteers into another room to have a conversation with a stranger, the makeup artist said something. I just need to apply a cream to prevent the scar from drying out. The makeup artist applied the cream. But here's the trick. The cream actually removed the scar. By the time the volunteer walked into that room, their face was completely normal. There was no scar. But the volunteer didn't know that. They believed they were walking into a conversation with a hideous, disfiguring scar on their face. And they acted like it. They felt self-conscious. They felt judged. They assumed the other person was staring at the scar, feeling uncomfortable, wanting to look away. After the conversation, the researchers asked the volunteers, did the other person seem tense? Did they avoid eye contact? Did they seem uncomfortable? The volunteers said yes. They were certain of it. The other person had clearly been disturbed by the scar. But there was no scar. The volunteers had imagined the entire thing. They had projected their own self-consciousness onto the other person. They had created a social reality out of nothing. And that's the power of the spotlight effect. It doesn't just make you feel watched. It makes you see things that aren't there. The modern mirror. So what does this mean for you today? You live in a world that has amplified the spotlight effect to levels your ancestors never experienced. Social media, video calls, public posting. Every day, you put versions of yourself out into the world and wait for feedback. And your brain, that ancient, egocentric brain, tells you everyone is watching. Everyone is judging. Every like is validation. Every silence is rejection. But here's the data. The same cognitive bias that made college students overestimate their Barry Manilow shirt is now making you overestimate how many people saw your Instagram story. How many people noticed your typo in the group chat? How many people are talking about you behind your back? They're not. They're looking at their own story, their own typo, their own life. The spotlight is not on you. It never was. And that, paradoxically, is the most freeing thing you'll ever learn. The freedom. Here's the practical takeaway. When you feel the spotlight burning, when you walk into a room and feel all those eyes on you, you have a choice. You can remind yourself of the data. 50% becomes 10%. The scar isn't there. Your anxiety is invisible. And the person you think is judging you? They're probably just wondering if you noticed their Barry Manilow shirt. The spotlight effect is real. It is measurable. It has been replicated dozens of times across decades of research. But it is also an illusion. A trick your brain plays on you because you are, inevitably, the center of your own world. The cure is simple. Remember that everyone else is the center of their own world too. And in their world, you're just a supporting character. Maybe even an extra. And that's okay. That's actually wonderful. Because it means you can relax. You can stop performing. You can stop worrying. You can walk into that room and know, with complete confidence, that nobody is watching you as closely as you think. You're walking into a room, 20 people, maybe 30, and for the first time, you don't feel the weight of their attention. You feel something else. Freedom. Because you finally understand. They're not watching you. They're watching themselves. And that's the most liberating thing you'll ever know.